Hey everyone, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Well folks, Thanksgiving is approaching pretty quickly this week, so today, let me take you back to a Disney princess that I talked about 2 years ago, Pocahontas. Now, folks may say that Pocahontas is one of the classic animated films that came from the Disney Renaissance, and in my opinion, well, while blogging this movie, I pretty much have to agree with most people out there, despite the fact that there are a few controversial stuff and historical changes. But on the bright side, the movie did have some great animation, memorable characters, and outstanding songs, thanks to the geniuses Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz. You may also remember that after the blog, I did say that I might blog Pocahontas' sequel. Well, my friends, that moment has finally come. But do I hate it as much as most folks do? Or do I find something redeeming about it? Well, let's find out. Released a home video on August 4th, 1998, the movie is Pocahontas 2: Journey to a New World. Now let's get started. In this animated sequel, John Smith goes missing after soldiers try to capture him on charges of treason that were trumped up by Governor Radcliffe. Smith's longtime love, Native American princess Pocahontas, is devastated by the news. In the meantime, she must voyage to England as an ambassador. With her dashing guide, John Rolfe, Pocahontas enters a strange new world, determined to prevent an unjust war against her people. Now, what do I think of this movie? Well, my sister and I did like this film when we were kids, and of course, nowadays, even though it's not as good as the original, I still kinda like it, but not as much as I used to. But anyway, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, since there's not much trivia here, let's talk about the animation. And in my opinion, the animation that Disney Toon Studios did for this film is okay. I mean, yes, it's not as good as the first movie's animation, but at least it's better than several CGI films released nowadays. Also, in my opinion, this version of London of the 1600s looks pretty good. And it's a lot different from the London that I visited back in summer 2010. There are a few scenes in this movie that I found pretty memorable, like the ball scene, as well as the final climax where the main characters stop Radcliffe's armada, and the escape scene at the Tower of London. Speaking of which, for those who have seen my Minions blog, the Tower of London was the first place I visited on my first day in London. However, there are a few parts of the movie that I didn't like. For example, the part where Pocahontas goes into an outburst while trying to defend a captive bear, and there was a man in Jamestown who called her a bloody savage twice in the same scene. Now here's where we come to the songs in the movie, and to be honest, the songs are kind of a mixed bag for me. The first song is Where Do I Go From Here, sung by Pocahontas after finding John Smith's compass in the snow and grieves his so-called death. It later gets a reprise towards the end of the movie when she realizes that she must be herself in order for people to truly accept her, and when she is torn between her old lover John Smith and her new lover John Rolfe. The scene somewhat mirrors the scene in Mulan when Mulan sings Reflection, as both girls look at their reflections, wipe off their makeup, and let their hair down, with the intent of accepting themselves for who they are. In my opinion, this song is good, but I feel like it's trying a bit too hard to be the next Color of the Wind. Next we come to my favorite song in the movie, What a Day in London, sung by Pocahontas and the London's townspeople, soon after Pocahontas and John Rolfe arrive. This is mostly about Pocahontas' excitement of the new place she finds and the London's initial people reaction to her. They all seem to have various and different reactions that are both positive and negative. However, in my opinion, this song, feels like a song that should be in a Broadway show that takes place in London. Plus, the way Pocahontas is throughout the song is almost like anyone who's ever visited London for their first time. Next is Wait Till He Sees You, sung by Mrs. Jenkins and John Rolfe, while they show Pocahontas how to fit right into London city life, and as well as getting her ready to meet the King and Queen of England. To me, this song almost makes me think of My Fair Lady, with a little dash of the etiquette song from Little Nemo. Still, this song is just okay in my opinion, just not great. Finally, we come to the new villain song, Things Are Not What They Appear, sung by Radcliffe and a jester while they perform in an ensuing magic show and manipulate Pocahontas during dinner time. In my opinion, while this song is not like Mine, Mine, Mine or Savages from the first movie, this song does feel pretty twisted. Anyway, now that we got Mustang notes out of the way, let's move on to the characters and their voice actors. Our main heroine, Pocahontas, is once again voiced by Irene Bedard. In this movie, Pocahontas is similar but different from the first movie. She desires everlasting peace between England and her people. Plus, she's still a strong princess who follows her heart. I also like that she travels to London as a diplomat in her father's place while falling in love with John Rolfe along the way. Plus, I think the gown Pocahontas wears to the ball makes her look very wonderful. Next we have Pocahontas' animal friends, Meeko the raccoon, Flit the hummingbird, and Percy, Radcliffe's former pug dog, voiced by John Cassier, Frank Welker, and Danny Mann. Now, in case you guys are wondering, these three are mostly the comic reliefs of the movie, but they're still as memorable as they were in the first film. For example, Meeko is always looking for fun and still very mischievous. Flit is now warmer towards strangers than before, but he's still very protective of Pocahontas. As for Percy, well, he still gets into fights with Meeko over food, but he's still very funny. Sadly, Mel Gibson didn't return to reprise his role as John Smith. So instead, his voice was provided by his brother, Donald Gibson. Best known for being in Braveheart. And in my opinion, Donald does a pretty good job voicing Smith. Throughout the movie, Smith is presumed dead and in hiding after a confrontation with Radcliffe at the beginning of the movie. Smith was falsely accused for treason in Jamestown. He later resurfaces to aid Pocahontas and John Rolfe against Radcliffe. Next up is our returning villain, Governor Radcliffe, again voiced by David Ogden Stiers, who has been in Beauty and the Beast, Lilo and Stitch, Spirited Away, and of course, Hoodwinked. To me, Radcliffe is still the greedy jerk he was in the first movie. Having lied to King James about the events in Jamestown, Radcliffe becomes more determined than ever to go into war with the Powhatans in order to find his falsely speculated gold, even if it means influencing the king. What I found interesting is that in the beginning of the movie, when Radcliffe says, "Pity, I so would have preferred to see you hanged," before he kicks Smith into the river to his supposed death. And, at the end of the movie, in the words of Jack Dawkins, that line comes back to haunt him, when Smith and Rolfe defeat him. Plus, I found it kind of despicable when Radcliffe dances with Pocahontas at the ball. Now let's move on to the new characters, starting with Pocahontas' guide and love interest, John Rolfe, voiced by Billy Zane. Best known as Caledon Hockley from James Cameron's Titanic, and Ansem, aka Xehanort's Heartless from the first Kingdom Hearts. Now, I'd hate to infuriate most of you watching this blog, but I think Rolfe is a great character. And of course, according to history, Rolfe does marry Pocahontas, so I can't really hate this movie for shipping them. Anyway, this young diplomat was sent to Jamestown to bring Chief Powhatan to England, and of course, he does end up falling in love with Pocahontas, to the point that he stands up against Radcliffe and King James. Next we have Pocahontas' bodyguard, Utamata, whose vocals are provided by Brad Garrett? Interesting. Anyway, Uti is sent by Powhatan to watch over Pocahontas. Despite the fact that he doesn't talk too much, he's still pretty badass while defending Pocahontas from the guards, or when he's running while Pocahontas and the others are riding. Next we have John Rolfe's housekeeper, Mrs. Jenkins, voiced by the late Gene Stapleton. Best known from the All in the Family TV series. Now, Mrs. Jenkins is not your typical Englishwoman. She is depicted as kind and generous to every visitor, pretty similar to Mrs. Potts from Beauty and the Beast. She is displayed as a rather comical character, due to her mistakes such as breaking things when people yell out her name, her blind mistakes when she doesn't have her glasses on, or the fact that she makes tea for almost everything. Though comical, she's still very helpful and motherly to Pocahontas. Finally, we have King James of England, voiced by the great Jim Cummings. While well-meaning, he is portrayed as a simple-minded buffoon who is very easily manipulated by Radcliffe. He also seems to have primitive views on the Native Americans, as he initially believes them to be mere savages as Radcliffe did. But by the end of the movie, he is shown the error of his ways. And now, let's move on to my final words. Overall, Pocahontas 2: Journey to a New World is not a great sequel, but it's not terrible these days compared to sequels like The Fox and the Hound 2 or Belle's Magical World, or terrible CGI films like Food Fight. Still, the setting in London looks really nice, and I like that they tried to stay true to history. Plus, the voice acting is still pretty good. What's more, the main characters are memorable, including John Rolfe. The supporting characters are pretty good too. Plus, Radcliffe is still a greedy jerk. Also, the new characters like Utamata and Mrs. Jenkins are very memorable as well. Lastly, the animation is okay, but not terrible these days. And of course, some of the songs are a tad forgettable, but they're okay to listen to. However, there are some parts of the movie that are a bit mean-spirited, but if you can ignore those bits, this movie is still okay to watch, but not all the time. As for my rating, I give this film a 60% out of 100. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Be sure to join me again next time. Mustang Power. Oh, and have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. Well, now that we're done with Thanksgiving, I guess I can move on my Christmas marathon now. Why? Well then, I guess I can't let my fans down. I better get to work after I see the movie in theaters.